India's GDP is expected to grow by 6.5 to 7% in the financial year 2025. This growth is because of better private sector finances, more demand from rural areas, and more exports, says the Economic Survey 2023 to 24. But conflicts between countries might hurt this growth. The Economic Survey says that India's GDP growth for 2025 will be 6.5 to 7%, which is less than the 8.2% growth in 2024. Chief Economic Advisor V. Ananta Nageshwaran says that the Indian economy is still strong, but we need to work hard to keep it that way. The survey warns that conflicts between countries could cause problems like breaking supply chains, higher prices for goods, and changes in inflation and money policies. It also says that India needs to handle higher interest rates in developed countries and compete with their industry policies to keep investors interested.
There is momentum in the economy. In fact, we are now one quarter in the new financial year, and even high-frequency indicators are telling us that the economy is carrying on the momentum that we have seen until the end of March 2024, when we grew at 8.2%. So the average growth rate in the last 3 years up to March 24 has been around 8%. And as we write in the survey, real GDP is 20% above the pre-pandemic levels. And the growth has been contributed to by a steady maintenance of the share of private consumption. Capital formation is beginning to recover as we would expect post-COVID and post-balance sheet repair. And exports are doing quite well under the circumstances as well. And investment is being driven by not only by public sector capital formation. Both union and state governments have clearly been spearheading the capital formation. But let me also tell you that private capex has been growing. Private capex has recovered after the stagnation or decline we saw in 1920 and 2021. They did pick up in 21-22 and 22-23.
Employment trends show that sudden shocks, not long-term problems, have affected job creation. The survey asks the private sector to help more in creating jobs and spending money on projects because more jobs are created in the private sector.
Inflationary pressures under control. In the previous 3 years, the deviation of inflation from the target of 4% is the lowest in India, and the headline inflation rate is coming well within the band and should come to below 5% in the current financial year. And of course, you all know that the core inflation is running well below 4%. Monetary policy transmission is evident, and monetary policy stance may not necessarily be considered restrictive given the fact that credit growth is running in double digits as well. And both a slew of administrative measures and monetary policy combined to make sure that inflation never got out of hand. And compared to many other nations, the fact that we had a very small deviation from our target was facilitated by the proactive both fiscal and non-fiscal administrative measures and monetary policy measures taken. Ultimately, all these macroeconomic statistics have to result in the most important variable that the public is looking for, our Indian formal sector creating enough jobs. If you look at it, based on the returns filed by Indian factories, about 2 lakh of them, in the annual survey of industries, factories which are more than 100 workers, they constitute roughly about 21% of the total number of 2 lakh factories. But they constitute 80% of the workforce. Therefore, it is heartening to see that the workforce growth rate in these factories, which have more than 100 workers, is 13.2% in the last 4 years, compared to the growth rate of only 4.8% in relatively smaller factories. So on top of a larger base of workers in the aggregate, factories with more than 100 workers are actually seeing their workforce rise faster as well. And that is a very good sign of formalization of the Indian manufacturing sector. And this is from the ASI data, which is available until 21-22.
The government spending on projects has been a key driver of growth. The chief economic advisor urges the private sector to keep up this momentum with the government. He stresses the need for working together to meet India's high growth goals and become a developed nation by 2047.
This survey picks up on the theme that all hands on the table must be there, and no economic approach will be exclusionary or will be excluded. We need manufacturing, we need services, We need agriculture. We need the public and private sectors to act together. We need union and state governments to act together. Because given the way the global conditions are evolving, we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing specific approaches in our path towards Viksit Bharat. And that is the overall theme of the survey itself.
Srishti Athanikar and Omkar Deshprabhu for GOA365.